Welcome back, fight fans. Mark G here. And it's the 203 Fight Network's Tough 25 Redemption Review. We had a good one tonight. Always some drama. And somebody walked away with $15,000. You know what that means. Find out what happened coming up next. Welcome, fight fans. Thank you again. What a night. What a night of fights. What a night of a fight. What a night for Tough tonight. Today is Wednesday, April 26, 2017, and this is your 203 Fight Network Tough 25's Review. Episode 2. Eddie Gordon versus Tom Gallicchio. The fight at the end. But this episode didn't start out with a fight in the octagon. This episode started out with a fight between the coaches arguing like high school girls. So yeah, about you're not even 5 minutes in, and this sort of basically pans into them, arguing and yelling, going back and forth about who kicked who off the team and who did this, who did that. Starting to get a little that whole thing's starting to get a little old. I know that's always going to bring a certain rivalry to these two, especially between Cody and TJ. And they have to promote the fight and push things and and do what they do. But it just kept going on, and I'm sure this is going to go on the entire season. So I think we're all going to get either totally sick of it, or I think everyone's just going to keep feeding off of it. But they finally kind of calmed down, and, everybody's trying to tell their side of the story. Even Danny Castillo, jumped in and tried to tell TJ that he ruined the team. TJ, you destroyed the team. You broke the team apart. And, I don't think, I definitely caused some dissension. I think probably where he was going with that was ever since TJ left and Benavidez, I think, left, or, a couple guys would, try and, train or, go out there. And that's happened. That's happened a lot. There's been a bunch of guys who've gone out to Colorado, maybe to even just help TJ out. So I don't know if that's affected certain relationships and, where they go from there. It's a sensitive issue, and when he left, he was trying to better himself, TJ, obviously, and Uriah took it as he wanted to have his cake and eat it too, and Uriah even compared it to, like an ex-girlfriend or, something along those lines. So, I don't. This is going to go on. So they're going back and forth. I think it's going to be a really long time before you see any of these guys really patch things up. Even after the fight, even with Uriah and with TJ. While Uriah was on camera, who's really, if you didn't know any better, you would think Uriah was the head coach here, especially today. Seemed like he was doing a lot of the coaching and just a lot of the instruction, camera kind of panning to him. While I'm talking to Eddie Gordon, I had Tom on my team last in the season when I coached a couple seasons back, so I know his weakness. And I guess you kind of expect him to do that. He doesn't really hold too much loyalty to Tom. Not like he trains there or anything like that. So, Eddie was a big favorite in this fight, and they were definitely super confident going in. So we'll definitely get to that and see how it turned out there in a minute. But this wasn't too bad of an episode. It was Diego Lima's birthday, and they took Team Dillashaw went out. I'm not sure where they went. So probably some type of Mexican restaurant from what I've seen from what they were serving. But, it was nice to see all those guys go out and, just get a little bit of a release. It's nice that they let them out. Obviously in years past, they'd save that to the end of the seasons, and you wouldn't see too much or too many episodes where these guys were, having a good time, in the public, just maybe having a good time in the house, drinking and beating each other up. Sorry, it's getting late. Trying to, get this in. I recorded this earlier, and then something happened with my computer. It got all messed up, and I was about. It took everything I had in my power not to take a baseball bat to my computer because I just got through shooting what I thought was kind of a really great video, and that's why you don't hear the normal opening song that I put in, because that's where there was a mess up, and I just didn't really even feel like kind of going back over it. We'll definitely get that back out and fix a lot of those technical issues. I'm still trying to figure out what the best software to use here is. I'd really rather go live, but I just don't have the encoder software or and the equipment to really do that right now. If anybody has any ideas to what I can get, trying to keep the cost down. I do run this little minor operation here on my own, trying to really get the channel off the ground and just build something out of this. Just seems like a thing to do right now for myself and for my family in a little bit of a rough type of situation. So I'm just out there. I am just trying to make something out of this. My dad was put through hell out here, and we got loads and stacks of things, and he's he's a tough guy because he's fighting through what's killed a lot of people, and he's definitely not in a great situation anymore, and he really can't move at all or whatnot, and that's not any of his fault. That was some don't really want to get into it, but too much more. But it's tough. But let's get back to the Ultimate Fighter here. So they had the birthday party, and like I said, it was nice to see those guys out. Other than that, wasn't too many crazy things that happened. What they did do though was really nice. Is they did flashback and show Eddie Gordon at his house, and they did like a whole following of them leading up. And I think we're gonna see this with every fight and every fighter leading up here. I think probably what they did was sent a little camera crew to film them, but before they came out to catch their lives and whatnot. So it was definitely kind of good. They showed Eddie's got a whole bunch of kids. I don't know how many there were. There was just so many. It's after one or two, there was a lot. He did bring one of his kids to the gym. He trains over there in Long Island with Sarah Longo BJJ. So his going into this fight, you would definitely expect his jiu-jitsu to be on point and him to be well rounded right now. I mean, being that he's a wrestler and a striker, and training at Sarah Longo, it's definitely high level, training with guys like Chris Weidman. So you got to assume when your Brazilian jiu-jitsu instructor is Matt Serra, who's the first American to hold a black belt under Renzo Gracie, that's no easy feat to get. And if you ever listen to the podcast he does there with Jim Norton, when he talks about putting people in certain submissions, he definitely knows what he's talking about, and obviously had one of the biggest upsets in the history of this sport, and that was definitely a great fight. Happy to see that. But so you definitely think that Eddie Gordon's a little bit well rounded, and going in, like I said, you thought he was going to win this fight. So, will he win this fight? We're going to find out. But Tom Gallicchio isn't going to go out. Isn't going to go out without swinging. This kid's got a lot on the line. He showed a lot in his little vignette there. Leaving the last Ultimate Fighter, Tough 22, which he really didn't have that good of a showing on. He did have to have surgery on his shoulder, surgery on his foot. He called them reconstructive. You can call them whatever you want. When you get major surgeries, it is what it is. Everybody has those, types of injuries where we need some type of medical help, and we can't afford it. Unfortunately, when you're a fighter, you're constantly, re-injuring those. Just like if you're, everybody gets hurt at their job. I probably have about, at least 4 things on me that I need surgery with, both my elbows, maybe maybe even more. So it's just pretty sad when you think about it. So you don't want to think about that much at all. But Gallicchio, They showed him with his girlfriend. They showed his little candy business that he's got going on. They call him the Candy Man. Some people call him Toothless Tom. He calls himself the Tank. He didn't really go by that on the show here so far. So maybe he's kind of dropping that, which I think would be a great idea. But that's just one man's opinion. So they got into the weigh-ins, and before the weigh-ins, they're really going. TJ was really going into it with Tom and giving him his strategy. And I'm going to tell you what, very impressed with TJ. Very, very, very impressed with how he's coached these guys so far. It's only episode 2, but even in this episode, and I don't know if it's the editing and they're really trying to make TJ look really good and really trying to make Cody just, look really bad, because they're really showing, not to say Cody's looking bad, but they're not showing him in the greatest light. They're not really showing a lot of interaction or a lot of positive interaction, at least so far from what I've seen, even with his fighters, and even with the other coaches. I mean, he's already had that where he grabbed TJ by the neck. I'm sure there's probably going to be at least 5 more of similar types of things, and I think they might even have told these guys that they need to break it up or get in the middle, because you're starting to see when they're walking out together, because there's a lot of that where TJ and Cody are going to be next to each other. So when you see that, you start to see a lot of these guys just kind of get in between them before anything. And as soon as they see each other, man, they're jawing. And if TJ's not jawing with Cody, then TJ is jawing with Uriah. And if Uriah's not, they're just back and forth. And I was really kind of surprised to see Danny Castillo kind of come out and jump down on TJ, because I from every interview I've seen, a lot of interviews I've seen with TJ, he spoke very highly of Danny Castillo. And Justin Buchholz. Buchholz was in there. I actually thought that was Justin Buchholz. Like when it first, in the beginning of the show, when he came out, you ruined the team and this, and that. For some reason, I thought that was Justin, but he's not a coach on there. Danny Castillo is, so we're gonna have to assume it was Mr. Danny Castillo. But to get back into it, TJ's just been doing great, I thought. But like I said, it could all be editing, and Uriah. If you watch the preview show that I did for the Tough preview show, which was up last week, before it started, obviously before episode 1, I went over all the coaches and gave my opinions on them, and they didn't really have a title for Uriah. So when I was looking at the list, when I was checking up on the I'm doing my research. So I gave him a title, and that would be assistant head coach. And if you've seen him tonight, you would definitely think that you would have thought, if you weren't really paying much attention, you would have thought he was the head coach. If you didn't know any better and you're just kind of tuning in because maybe somebody told you to watch this Ultimate Fighter because something with the storyline, it could be anything. You would not really... You wouldn't have really known, I think, on too many levels that Cody Garbrandt was the head coach. You would have think it was for Uriah. So, they move into the weigh-ins. Eddie Gordon weighed in at 170.5, and I did not know, coming to find out, and I was a little upset about this, found out this before and after. I thought I did some serious, I do my research on stuff, and I checked a few different places and thought I heard, and I even thought I heard him say in an interview that he did a test cut, or he did fight at 170, and it wouldn't. That would be really. I was real surprised to find out that this was his first cut to 170. He said it wasn't very hard for him. We'll get, and I'll talk about that on how it affected him in his fight. But I was really shocked, and I'm really shocked that the UFC let him come on that show, never making the 170 weight. I mean, I know that maybe sometimes not making the weight, at least in a situation from the reality show of The Ultimate Fighter, that it might make for some decent TV, a guy struggling to make weight. But when you're, really trying to build like this type of competition, what they're trying to do here, and put this really big prize money on the line, I'm surprised that they let Eddie Gordon on the show without being able to, at least making 170 for a fight, at least one time. But then, they cut to Dana White in, one of his little interviews, and he was really praised. He really praised the crap out of Eddie Gordon, but then shot him right back down with that 3-fight losing streak, and everything that happened from there. Eddie Gordon was knocked out by Josh Saman. He lost this very close decision in the next fight, and then was submitted by the Antonio at the Carros Jr., who was the Tough Brazil winner. Tough kid, man. I can't wait to see him fight again. I don't know what's going on with him. I got to check up on that. It's one of the better Brazilian fighters. He submitted Eddie Gordon pretty quick. Gordon did win a fight, like I said in the preview show, outside of the UFC, which probably got him in, but it wasn't at 170. So really surprised. Tom Gallicchio weighed in at 170 pounds on the nose. People made some comments about his sweater that he was wearing. It wasn't a sweater, but I hope you all understand. So, going into the fight, the next day. So they weigh in, they do the stare down. Eddie did kind of look a little drained, a little drawn out. You kind of expect that. He always cuts a lot of weight. At one point, this guy weighed almost 300 pounds, maybe even more. Former, high school, college wrestler, so he's been a big guy and cut a lot of weight down. He thought he finally found his ideal weight here at 170, but this fight started out and Tom jumped out there pretty aggressively, landed a right, kind of shook Eddie a little bit, nothing crazy to where you thought Eddie was going to fall, but it definitely made Eddie kind of think for a minute and kind of choose a little, but he still didn't seem like he really respected any part of Tom's game. He kind of kept pushing forward, which you would expect him to do. Eddie did land a couple of his overhand rights and backed Tom up a little. But, there was a little back and forth. It wasn't anything too crazy. According to TJ and what TJ was, how he wanted Tom to fight this fight, he wanted him to, kind of stick and move a little and, work him. And then when the time was right, get a takedown and then wear Eddie out, maybe go for a submission. And spoiler alert, that's kind of exactly what happened. He got in there, he went for a single leg, and it just seemed like Eddie Gordon, it was almost like he let him take him down. I mean, because not to take anything away from the takedown, or was not to say it wasn't a strong takedown, but it wasn't much resistance from that at all. And I was really shocked. And he even his ground game, he's trying to get right back up, without even really posting a proper position or trying to make sure that this guy isn't going to jump on his back or push him down and force him down. But next thing you know, Eddie Gordon's on his back. Tom's going for a scramble. He's moving in the half guard. He's trying to mount. Eddie's moving around, and he obviously moved the wrong way. Tom took his back, had his neck for God knows how long. I swear it's like I thought he had his neck for at least a minute or more. It mostly had him neck crank for a while. But, normally, I don't know, if you were on my back and you were trying to get a rear naked choke synced in and you had it on my chin, I wouldn't really worry as much about the body lock and your legs wrapped around me, because chances are I'm not the Joker, Mike Gaiman. I'm not going to tap to the body lock. So, he didn't use his hands. He didn't try and pry the arms down. He didn't really do much to defend himself. I was really kind of disappointed in that. So I don't know if he froze, if he was just in shock. I really don't know. Some guys, they have all this talent, and Eddie Gordon does, and no disrespect, but he really just didn't seem. He seemed like as soon as that bell rang, he was just kind of going through those motions a little bit, and the guy that wanted it more won that fight, and that was Tom, and that was Tom Gallicchio, and that was a big upset, man, and he's moving on, and he's $15,000 richer, $10,000 for the win, and $5,000 for the finish bonus in the first round. Not to mention that's just like another future check, man, because that's going to get Tom a fight on the Tough 7 finale. I'm sorry, on the Tough 25 finale on July 7th at the T-Mobile Arena. Big fight just announced for that. We'll go over that in a minute. But, I was really shocked at how that fight kind of went. Eddie, as we all know, just let me bring up my tablet here. Eddie, as we all know, was one of my picks to win. I picked three guys that I thought, three, possibly four, that I thought might be favorites. Eddie Gordon, James Krause. He's the one current UFC fighter, and he's actually on a winning streak. Moving up from 155 to 170 is Krause. You got a lot of guys moving down. Hence, when we talk about, where, Eddie Gordon's been. Eddie Gordon was fighting at 185 for the longest time, and now he's fighting at 170. They wondered how he was going to take the cut. And as far as I know, he said it didn't really affect him very well. But he's not going to get much of a chance to make that cut again in the UFC. If you listen to Dana White, they're giving him another shot, and he let that slip out of his hands. So I was, like I said, I was definitely surprised at his performance. Going in, the show wasn't over totally yet, but Cody and his team and Castillo, they seem like they're pretty hard on Eddie Gordon, and how he handled himself in the fight. Especially Castillo was pretty emotional. Got really pissed, and I don't blame him. He was talking about the same thing I was talking about. The only reason why I mentioned it is because that's the first thing that went through my head. The first thing when I'm watching him, I'm like, why isn't he pulling the arms down? Why isn't he on his arms? He's messing with his legs. What are you doing, man? Correct. Get that off. He's trying to choke you. I was certainly so shocked by that. But they were definitely got on him a little bit, and we'll see where it goes, and we'll see if I don't think he gets another fight. I think you're gonna have to see this kid fight a bunch of times, at least 3 times, before he's going to get a shot in the UFC. He's going to have to get some wins. He's going to have to string some wins together at 170. He's going to have to make that weight. He's going to have to maybe get some finishes. I like Eddie Gordon. I hope he battles his way back, man. I really do. I really hope he does. But congratulations to Tom, man. Rear naked choke in the first round. I think it was at 141 or 121. It was 120, something like that. He took him. He got him takedown around 2 minutes left in the first round, and then got his back. And he had, well, maybe it was a little bit less than a minute, because he had his back for a good 30 seconds. He was choking him down there pretty good. So Tom moves on. Next week will be Mahadi Baghdad taking on JT Money Taylor, another one that I kind of really think that he is a good shot to win this. He's definitely seemed like he's focused. He's not as wild as what he was before, and he has fought everywhere, man. Jesse's fought around the world. He's bounced back from some wins and some losses, especially recently. He did actually win his last fight before they came in the house. He beat Seth Baczynski. So, but I think hopefully if Jesse Taylor can keep his head on straight and focus, he should do well in this. But Baghdad's got some power. We'll go over that whole next week's fight in the preview. Make sure you stay tuned to that, as well as episode 5 of the Objective Perspective, 203 Fight Network's exclusive podcast. The Objective Perspective, episode 5, will be Bellator 180, Sonnen Silva. We're going to give a little preview of the upcoming Bellator card. It will be my first podcast about Bellator, about anything really Bellator, and we'll go over that main event and what will actually be the main event at Bellator, because we all know, if you've been listening to my shows, my podcast, we all know that Vanderlei Silva ain't fighting, man. He's not fighting. He is not fighting, and that will probably be the title of the video. Vanderlei Silva is not fighting at Bellator 180, so stop promoting it. Stop thinking about it. Chael Sonnen will make the walk. Who will he make the walk against? I don't know. But before that episode of the Objective Perspective podcast, I am going to talk about this upcoming matchup for the Tough 25 finale, the Ultimate Fighter 25 Redemption finale, July 7th, the T-Mobile Arena. Oh, this is a great fight. This is what should be a great fight. I shouldn't get too far ahead of myself. Mark Diakiese versus Drakkar Klose. Klose is a undefeated prospect, 8-0-1, fights out of the MMA Lab, is a product of Michigan. He's 1-0 in the UFC. He's had a unanimous decision win over Devin Powell. That was back in January. This is definitely a huge step up in competition. Diakiese has been a beast. If you want to go back and please check out the first edition of the Objective Perspective, which is my state of the UFC lightweight division. I went over all the lightweights, went over every single one of them, just about all the ones that really matter at this point. The 203 Fight Network top 10. I went over all them. I went over the fights, some of the matchups, what should be made, what Tony Ferguson should be doing, what Edson Barboza should be doing. They obviously listened to the podcast because once they heard what I said, they started putting it out there in the media because I'm the one that called for Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson, possibly for an interim title. It's the only thing that makes sense if you're trying to get a third fight with Conor to unify those belts. Also, I said, you don't want to do that? Then why don't we do Edson Barboza versus Tony Ferguson in July for the interim title? Okay, that first fight they fought was a fantastic fight. It neither dominated on either side. Tony choked him out by a Bravo choke. It was, like I said, a phenomenal fight, a fight that I would pay to see again, and I'm sure many of you would as well. If you have Fight Pass, go on and watch that fight. And if they were to make a rematch for that, that would be fantastic. For July, it would fit into UFC Fight Week. Ferguson, Barboza for the interim title. If Conor and Floyd fight in September, maybe we can unify the belts in December. The winner of that fight, fighting Conor, maybe he can finally defend his title for once. But that's not the fight I'm talking about. I'm talking about Diakiese Drakkar, man. Diakiese is a beast, and on that show, The Objective Perspective, Episode 1, I predicted him cracking the top 10 at least by the end of this year. He needs to go 3 or 4-0. I am a little surprised that they did not give him a bigger name, more experienced opponent. That's kind of what I was looking for him. If anything, I think this is just another step for them with him to get his feet wet on American soil. I do not believe he's ever fought on American soil before. Fighting in Las Vegas obviously will be his first time. They seem like they are kind of baby stepping him along, slow walking him for a lack of a better term, because I don't see why they didn't give him a bigger name. And I'm not trying to knock Drakkar, man. I did not catch his first fight. I'll have to go back and watch. But, this kid is undefeated, and he must be something pretty special if they're willing to try and put him, Diakiese, against this kid in this match, because the UFC doesn't really do throwaway fights. So, definitely excited for this fight and a little shocked that Diakiese did not get someone with some more experience than just one fight here in the UFC. But, once again, we're going to wrap that up here. Thank you very much, y'all, for joining me here today. This is Mark G with the 203 Fight Network. Hit that subscribe button. Press the like. Hit the thumbs up, man. That turns blue. Please comment on the video. Let me know what you thought of tonight's episode of Tough. Let me know what you thought of tonight's episode, the review and recap. Let me know how I'm doing here. Call me some names if you don't like it. If you do like it, then, let me know either way. Trying to build the channel up. I'm trying to be as interactive as possible. If I can build this up, we'll start doing some giveaways and some prizes. I'd love to do some contests and see how people fare with certain things, and have some good prizes. Make it worth y'all coming to the channel and checking me out. I hope, once again, you all be safe. Have a great day, and please stay tuned for Friday. The podcast will drop in the AM Friday morning. Bellator 180. We'll see what happens with that. Once again, 203 Fight Network. Mark G. Out.